Hi, my name is Tyler Swearingen, and my social issue presentation is on employment. In developing countries, 80% to 90% of persons with disabilities of working age are unemployed, whereas in industrialized countries, the figure is between 50% and 70%. In most developed countries, the official unemployment rate for persons with disabilities of working age is at least twice that for those who have no disabilities. In the U.S. alone, only 35% of working age persons with disabilities are in fact employed, compared to an employment rate of 78% in the rest of the population. So as you can see, there's a big difference between those with disabilities and those without disabilities on who is employed. For this slide, I found some fears that employers had of hiring disabled persons. Mainly what I found were myths about people with disabilities, and these myths included that they are unable to work and that accommodating the person with the disability in the workplace would just be too expensive, so it's not even worth hiring them. But contrary to those beliefs, many companies have found that people with disabilities are more than capable of being able to do the same amount of work, if not better work, than those without disabilities. So for this slide, I just found different quotes from around the world showing why the myths employers believe they shouldn't hire people with disabilities is just not true. A quote I found from America is, "Few employers are willing to hire workers with disabilities. Fear is the biggest barrier," said former Congressman Tony Caleo, an epilepsy survivor himself and one of the authors of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's really fear of the unknown. The best way to eliminate such fears, he argues, is to hire persons with disabilities. You'll find out that a lot of those things that you're fearful of are just not true. So he's saying basically that the biggest reason people with disabilities aren't being hired is just the fact that the employers are fearful of it and they are buying into these myths that they're going to be way too expensive to accommodate, or they're just not going to work out because they don't have the ambitions or whatever, when really all they have to do is hire a couple people with disabilities and allow them to work and just to see. And then he said that they'll be surprised to see that they are more than capable of being able to work and that they will fit in just fine. The quote I found from China is, "Disabled people are being forced out of work by bosses and coworkers who do not understand their needs," which is saying that people with disabilities aren't even given the chance on being employed because bosses and coworkers just don't even understand their needs when they're not taking the time to be able to look into it and see what they need to accommodate. Instead, they're just not even giving them a chance and just basically just pushing them away out of work so they don't have to worry about this, which is definitely just not fair to the people with disabilities. And the quote I found from the United Kingdom is, "Stereotypes of persons with disabilities are as incapable, unambitious, unreliable, and costly to employ are still abound. Ignorance, fear, and prejudice are among the reasons for persons with disabilities being 5 times more likely to be unemployed and claiming benefits than able-bodied people." So basically in the United Kingdom, the stereotypes are the only thing keeping the disabled people from being employed, same as the rest of the world. Just employers are buying into these myths and they are just fearful that they're true and that hiring people with disabilities will just not work out, when all they really need to do is just hire them and basically just find out for themselves how they are more than capable of being able to work just as a non-disabled person would be at their job. So why you should hire people with disabilities? Just like anyone else, the majority of persons with disabilities want a dignified and productive life. They just want to be treated just like anyone else and be able to provide for themselves or possibly even others, just like a person without disabilities would. Having a job is the best way for them to be able to just be treated like normal people and have a dignified and productive life. Employment provides not only income but also opportunities for social participation. This is very important for those people because people with disabilities might not be able to have the same social interactions or participation with other people, so being employed is a great way for them to get these interactions. Oftentimes, companies have found that having employees with disabilities opens their eyes and allows them to better understand customers with disabilities. Employing people with disabilities creates greater flexibility and builds a reputation and reaches out to new markets. So having people with disabilities being employed, oftentimes the employer has found that this creates a bigger market, it attracts more people, it gives them a good reputation, and it just allows a bigger market that they would not expect. So for this slide, I once again found different quotes from around the world on why you should hire people with disabilities. From the United States, the National Employment Studies, including a 30-year analysis by DuPonte and Newmar, show that persons with disabilities have equal or higher performance ratings, better retention rates, and less absenteeism. Employers with disabilities also relate better to customers with disabilities. In the United States, this represents $1 trillion in annual aggregate consumer spending. So not only are people with disabilities have an equal performance rating, some cases they have a higher performance rating than those without disabilities. They also show that they come to work more on time and that they are less absent from work. And not only do they have better performance ratings than people without disabilities, they also attract new customers because they are able to relate better to them that have the different disabilities. From South Africa, all said the cost to accommodate a disabled person is minimal in comparison to the value that the person can bring to the business. So this is saying that though one of the myths about having disabled people employed is that they were very costly and that it might not be worth it. But this is saying that no matter how much it costs to accommodate for the disabled person, that you can't compare the value that this person could bring to the business, like how the American quote had said that they have a relationship with the customers that people without disabilities just would never be able to achieve. And in China, one of the best and most effective ways to improve disabled people's living conditions is to provide more employment and access for them. This is saying that treating disabled people just like any other person is the most effective way to improve their lives. This shows that they could be treated just like anyone else and that they could provide for themselves. And this could just help their condition so much because they won't have to rely on other people and have the someone else that they're being relied on have to spend for them and themselves. This is just my reference slide that I used to show the different sources I had to make this project. And I would just like to thank everyone for listening and learning about the employment of people with disabilities.